and welcome to the Drop Point. We are here today with Brian Freeth of 1075 Consulting, and our guest today is Rick Frawley with Frawley Lytle Law Firm, based out in Kansas City, Missouri. Hi, Rick. It's so nice to have you on today. Why don't you go ahead and give us a little bit of an introduction about what you do?
Good morning. Well, it's a privilege to be here. Thank you. I'm honored to get the chance to talk to you guys about propane a little bit on the legal side. I've been practicing law about 25 years. I started out as a litigation guy. I'm a lawyer at a big firm as an associate, grinding away, trying lawsuits, including products liability cases. And after about 10 years, that got a little difficult to manage a family. So I went in-house at a very, very large propane company and eventually worked my way up to become the general counsel as well as charge of the safety department, the risk department, and the real estate department at that company. And I left there in 2019. For the last 7 years, I've been practicing my own type of law, which is sometimes a little bit different, my approach to things. And I've privileged to have a lot of propane companies from around the country that I represent, both in transactions as well as their general counseling. When they have a legal issue, they can call me and I give them an answer, as well as litigation sometimes too. And that includes suppliers of propane related equipment and parts too. So
Okay.
thank you.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Well, let's see. I've got a couple questions here for you. Let's get started with, so how has the propane industry changed since you've gotten involved? And then on the other hand, what is something that has surprisingly stayed the same?
That's a good question. For me, honestly, on the operational, the legal safety side of the business, I honestly have to say in the 20 years I've been involved, there's not been a lot of change. It's a pretty simple business, really. I mean, propane companies, my analogy has always been they're like gas stations, except they come to you to fill your tank. And, they pick up the propane and drop it off. And if they don't blow anything up, they hope to make a few nickels or dimes per gallon. It's a tough business. But if you treat your customers right, your employees right, and Mother Nature gives you some good weather, you can turn a profit and make a real difference and keep everybody warm and safe. So I think on that side generally hasn't been a lot of changes that I've seen, but I'm not an operator. Uh, but I'd have to say if there were a couple of things that I see as having changed, it'd be technology probably and the weather. We've got technology now like handheld devices, customer relationship software, electronic logging. Seems like an endless number of ways to communicate with our customers and internally. And that's can present some challenges. And I think secondly, we've had a good deal of challenges over the last 20 years I've been involved, caused by some warmer winter weather that make it kind of difficult to budget for things and manage your supply and right size the business, right? You don't build the church for Easter Sunday. So, you can have a 2012 polar vortex or you can have a 2014 tropical winter. You got to be prepared either way. So that weather's really been a challenge.
Yeah. Okay. And then has anything stayed the same?
The people, they're good people. I was really surprised when I got into propane. I'm kind of a blue collar guy, and I really don't even like lawyers very much. I just like to fix problems. And I needed a law degree to do that. And I think that the people that work on this are the most honest, hardworking, salt of the earth folks. They're easily relatable to. I always feel like I have a good relationship with them, and really enjoy what I'm doing there.
Awesome. Yeah. Brian, did you have anything to add to that?
No, I agree with Rick. It's the people in this business that make all the difference in the world. Without them, none of us would be successful.
Yeah. All right, next question for you. How has technology changed the way you practice law, or how propane companies manage compliance today?
With the way I practice law, it's changed, complete difference. When I got out of law school, we just got past Y2K. Everybody's buttoned down, wondering what's going to happen when the clock strikes 2000. I was practicing law out of books. Had to go to the library to look up cases. And it was a lot of work to try to come up with and find those statutes and things that would help your client solve their problems. Today, it's all electronic. I mean, with the push of a keystroke, I can pull up about any case in any state, any regulation, um, and that actually affects the business. It can help the clients. It also helps the adversary, right? Because they can push those buttons too and find the
Yeah.
same. And so I've enjoyed it. The other thing is we didn't even have cell phones. We didn't have email. We didn't have text, all these messaging apps. And that makes it easier for clients to communicate. I mean, day and night, people call me. And now the expectations are higher. They expect communications to happen in real time, and they expect you to have answers in real time. But overall, I think it's been a great benefit. I think we're being better lawyers due to that technology, but we face more challenges. As for how it's changed with compliance on propane companies today that I've seen, I mean, I think that technology, how it impacts the compliance management, it's really been a burden and a blessing. You now have so many more resources at your fingertips to streamline that compliance. I mean, you do the online safety training and you can electronically log your hours. You can electronically report and like, but that also tends to kind of make the government bureaucrats uh, more likely to regulate even more. And it potentially gives those plaintiffs lawyers we don't like more ammo if there ever is an issue. And I give you an example of that. I guess we used to be able to throw documents away in the garbage when the business didn't need them anymore. They weren't trying to do anything, just trying to get rid of all this paperwork. It's no big deal. But now, with the advent of technology, those plaintiffs lawyers can dig through that garbage because it's electronic. And it's virtually impossible to dispose of your garbage without leaving some trace behind.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, with your background, have you seen both sides of the courtroom and the boardroom?
Yes, I was lucky. I was able to practice on the litigation side. It's a pretty high stakes stuff on the product side with wrongful death and other kinds of accidents, tens of millions issue. And so I could see after the fact, what caused it. You're the lawyer, and in hindsight, it's somebody doing the litigation, defending the propane company or the other company. You see what causes it. And the interesting thing is you think then you know everything. You're like, well, that was silly. Well, I was viewing it through hindsight and not the
Yep.
reality of the business world. It's
Yeah.
easy to criticize after something bad happens. And this is all my job was to dig into those, to defend those companies and go, well, why did they do that? That was a dumb move. But when you're actually on the corporate side of that, the boardroom, so to speak, I don't know if I was actually in a boardroom too often, but I understand what you're saying. I got to know the business owners, the operators of the business, and how they
Uh-huh.
think and what really matters. So it doesn't do me any good. For example, if I'm the guy who decides to get a contract from my client for a propane supply, and I turn around and mark up that 50-page contract with a bunch of red line stuff because that's the perfect way to do that, push back. Well, perfect's the enemy of good there, because I quickly learned when I went in-house that propane customers have a lot of options generally. They walk with their feet. The only thing that differentiates a propane company from any other propane company is the price, the service, and safety. The customers
Yeah.
don't think about safety as much as they should. So it's
Yeah.
price and it's service, and they just walk. So you have to be very strategic when you're trying to make decisions, and they have to make business sense. And so I really learned that, lawyers don't think enough with their business hats on. And I think because of that, now I understand what really matters in those kind of contracts. Like example I gave you, that might have taken it 3-4 hours to go through and redline it all up. I could probably do that in 15, 20 minutes now. I do. And get it back and just focus on the issues that really cause the problems. Whether that's insurance provision, an indemnity provision, things like that. Knock on wood, I've never had a propane client complain about a bill or not pay one. And that's probably the concern most propane companies have that aren't those big, large ones. Is they want to get sticker shock. They want practical advice. They don't want him hawing around about hit pens or this or that. They want answers to problems. They want you to fix their problem. And that's what I'm paid for. Now that I have that boardroom side, as you mentioned,
Yeah.
I now understand how they think, and that helps me serve them better.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's probably really helped to shape the way that you work with the companies now, the propane
Absolutely.
companies now. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, those were great answers. Brian, you want to go ahead and take it away?
Yeah, Rick, appreciate you making time this morning for the call. Really enjoy the conversation. First thing for me is, what are some of the common legal pitfalls that companies may walk into without realizing it?
I think the answer to that question, Brian, really depends on the size of the propane company. There are a couple of propane companies out there that are so large, and the ones I'm talking about. They have a lot of visibility and a lot of insurance.
Mhm.
cannot necessarily adapt to changes as quickly as other large propane companies or the mom and pops can. And it kind of makes them a target for bureaucrats and plaintiffs lawyers. There's the easy scapegoat sometimes. They have problems that the smaller propane companies and middle-sized propane companies and even the mid-majors, what I'd call, don't have. So we can forget about them for a moment, focus mostly on the people that I represent and my experience. And I think with respect to those kind of propane companies, I don't think they have a lot of big legal or compliance problems until or unless something goes boom or the bobtail rolls over or crashes into another vehicle. And that's when the plaintiff's lawyers I mentioned show up and start doing that autopsy on what caused that accident. They're going to start with those safety policies and procedures, and then they're going to look through that electronic garbage I talked about, and then it can become a big, big problem. The funny thing is the smaller companies, they really know what they're doing. They're dialed into their employees, they're dialed into their business. They know it better than anybody else, but they don't always have the time and the resources to focus on dotting all their I's and crossing all their T's or focusing on that safety because they think, well, all my people are trained and are doing the right thing. And they usually are. But the focus on the safety and the focus on the safety training, um, you know, reviewing the safety policies and procedures and keeping them up to date, getting rid of the ones that don't apply anymore. So you don't have a lawyer asking you about why you didn't follow something that doesn't apply. And if you need help doing that, you can, I wouldn't call a lawyer first. I'd call a safety consultant. Um, it's worth the money. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, so to speak. So if you do those things as a smaller propane company, you probably solve 90% of your compliance and risk management issues. The other things can be fixed, and you'll sleep well at night because you know that you're doing the right thing, all you can do to keep your employees and drivers and customers safe.
Yeah, that's one of the things, just to piggyback on that for a second. One of the things that we find when we're out in the field is people understand what the job is. They know how to complete the task. They know what a leak check means, and they do the right steps. But their struggle is in proper documentation,
Yes.
right? Either not documenting per the company policy, or they don't have a policy on how to properly document. And maybe they haven't been completing the paperwork side thoroughly, right? They left blanks on a form on this one, but they didn't on the previous one. Understanding how important that is so that if there is an incident, somebody like you has the grounds to be able to provide a great defense for them versus when a form's not signed, it's not dated, the appliances aren't documented, the testing process isn't completely documented properly. Like at that point in time, it's pretty much get out your checkbook, right?
Right. I agree. That's a good point.
So when it comes to the companies protecting themselves legally, what should they do?
Well, I think, if you're just looking at it from the smaller to the medium-sized companies, you hit the nail on the head. Document those service calls. Especially your out of gas calls, and you want to make sure you're documenting those leak checks that you have on. Because if that documentation is not completed at all or not completely completed, the lawyers are going to say you didn't do it. That's going to be the assumption. And that's what a jury's going to say too. Even though we all know everybody's busy and sometimes you just don't make mistakes on that front. I think, if I were running a company today, a small propane company, I think you can't stop all the liability, unless you stop handling, transporting, and delivering propane, right? And that's silly. So I'd probably focus on the safety training, like I said, do it and document it. I would hire the very best drivers I could afford and safety technicians I could afford. Do everything you can to keep them fairly paid and happy. And when you do that, make sure the driver, if you can get it, is experienced. What's their history of employment in propane, if you have it? Have they washed out from some other company? Why are they going there? Because I do. We have an industry here that sometimes you see kind of recycles itself. People leave their places. And then I think probably customer contracts. And what I mean by that is mom and pop, sometimes I see, because I do these deals, they may have no contracts whatsoever. Or they may have a couple paragraphs and it's kind of sloppily put together. Maybe something they Google or they found and cut and paste from some other propane company. Don't do that. I think you don't need a 10-page contract and over lawyer or anything, but you need a good 2-page contract, and it has to be the right one. And so I would definitely focus on that safety. I definitely focus on the contracts and my hiring up front. making sure my training is done, refresher training is done and documented, so we can do that and have that defense.
So I want to step back to a leak check process, right? So one of the things we talked about before is documentation.
Mhm.
When a company receives a call for an out of gas or a leak, I smell gas call. What should the CSS or the person that answers the phone, what should they document? What should the person that dispatches that call document? What should the service tech document? And how should those documents be properly stored?
Well, a lot of that's going to depend on what they have available to them as a propane company. But oftentimes, in this day and age, you'll have a customer service personnel who, they should be able to make an entry on the time, date of the call, the customer called in, and make a record of that. And we got to make a record of who just was dispatched to go out and do that. And oftentimes, and Brian, you'll know better than this, better about this than I will. I mean, a lot of that can be done in handheld technology today. So it's gotten a lot easier. We're not going to lose paper and things, but you kind of maintain those things. So I'm not sure I answered all of your questions, but
No, to me, it's always about, so we had this call with Randy a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about the leak check process, and every person should have every leak test or every gas call, or whatever. They're all different, but the process to handle them should be the same for every one of them. Then you do not miss a step somewhere along the line. And if you're interrupted in your process, go back to the previous step, start there and continue on again. Because what happens, and you know this from your position, when you're out in the field and you're performing a test and the customer walks up and talks to you, maybe you missed a piece of that pie, and then something happens down the road. And it comes back to, what did you do during this particular occurrence? And come to find out it was different than every other one that you've ever done. And again, from your profession, just get the checkbook out.
yeah, and I sit there and think how much technology can help with that process. I know it means an expert on technology, but I do know, just like we all do when we try to pay something online or whatnot, we've got to check something in order to move to the next screen and page. That's easily done with the current handheld technology. And so, as much as it's going to be a good reminder to the driver, you don't allow them to move forward until they've done it. Right? Check the box to make sure they have all that stuff documented. So I think that's been a blessing if you have that technology. And I don't think that's used to be, I guess, 15 years ago, there's, maybe one company out there that was bragging about they're the only ones with it. This is why we're safer than others. And they had a good point. But now
Yeah.
that's available to everybody. And if it's right sized, the right dose of it at the right amount, it can be extremely helpful for that. We'll never have that issue again as long as we have that information backed up and stored. We can always pull it out readily. And it's not that difficult to actually get as opposed to sorting through a bunch of paper.
Yeah, we still have a number of companies that are very paper driven, right? It's just still a big
Yeah.
part of the industry. And making sure that if they are paper driven, that they again have a process on, hey, we completed a leak test. Here's the orange tag using PERC standard, right? Here's the orange tag that we applied. Here's the white copy. It was scanned and entered into the customer account, or it was filed in an accordion file, whatever that process is, making sure that even if you're using paper, there's no reason to miss that documentation requirement.
Right. It's helpful. And I know that not everybody has all the time, but yeah, you're right. It's common that we're still dealing with paper, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. But it is one of these things when we get to the summer, when we're past the winter heating season, it would be great when things slow down a little bit. And it's not expensive. It just takes time. And I do understand from being a small business owner how you just run out of time. But if you can perform some regular self audits, because you're not out there maybe doing every one of those, but pick those files up, pick those driver qualification files up, pick those service call files up, and go through the paper and just sample it a little bit and say, all right, is that getting done? And if not, who's not doing it? And it's easy fix. It's an easy fix, but I understand how it gets overlooked, and that's exactly what you keep saying, Ryan. Is once it's overlooked and there is an issue, and listen, 99.999% of the time, it's not going to become an issue.
Right.
Well, it is. And then you're like, I don't have it. I can't find it, or we didn't do it. And especially too, sometimes drivers are gone or the service technician's no longer with you. You lose your corporate memory, you grow. The success from a propane company is to grow into a bigger one, bigger one. And
Right.
as we do that, people leave. It's a natural occurrence, and you lose your corporate memory. So all you have left are those paper documents. That's how you do it. So you want to make sure you have those. Well done. Dot the I's and cross the T's.
So in this compliance litigation vein that we're talking about, without being specific, can you share an example of a case where a small operator made a mistake that led to a major consequence?
Yeah, the one that jumps out to me, Brian, still, and I know everybody probably in the industry knows it, but I just can't get past it because it was one of my first things when I went hand house that I was just trying to learn about propane more, and it's that little general store
West
issue
Virginia?
in West Virginia. Yeah, I mean,
It's
think
funny
about
you mentioned that because we actually used that video in one of our training seminars here not long ago,
yeah,
talking about, hey, just because it was that way for 10 years doesn't mean it was right. It should have been fixed 10 years ago.
right. And I think that video, I think it was 25 minutes at a chemical
Yeah.
safety board or something's out there. Um, you know, that's that's an occurrence of a couple tiny issues that caused 4 people to die and others to get injured. And we got the 10-foot setback requirement. We got a service technician there that was inexperienced, had no formal training that I know of. This was not anything I was personally involved in. This is something in the industry that I learned about. And then we got the actual reaction when something did go wrong. 30 minutes of propane venting into a building, people standing around not doing anything. Had he been trained, maybe it seems likely he would have seen that valve was stuck open before, kind of fully removing it. So anyway, yeah, that's probably, there's a lot of real world lessons in that to be gained, but just the tiniest little thing like that. And then obviously what happens on the other side with the plaintiff's lawyers, once they find out you've violated any portion of NFPA, they're going to be all over that, even if it's not the cause of it. So you just want to, good housekeeping goes a long way toward preventing these things.
So, what is something that looks fine on paper, but can actually become a bigger problem down the road?
Yeah, I really think, and I mentioned it earlier, was a technology issue. The emails and text messages, um, it's hard to do this, but be mindful of what you're saying in your text messages and your emails and how you say it. Um, Plaintiff's lawyers are going to find them, they're going to ask you about them, and they're going to twist the words kind of thing. And they look fine on paper. I guess that's why it answers your question. It looks fine. I'm trying to communicate. And normally we used to pick up the phone and call. And we call and we think for stream of thought, stream of consciousness. But we've gotten this way in America, and all over the world, we're just stream of consciousness on a text or email. Well, okay, that's fine if your text or email is about lunch, that's fine. If your text or email is about an accident or a customer complaint, some dispute of some sort, yeah, you got to really think about that. Do I need to send it all? And if I do send it, be mindful. I think I tell everybody as a lawyer, not just in propane, like when you send something like that, you kind of, if you think it's important, you need to review it twice and think about what would a juror look at that and say, see, what did they see? Because you're not conveying all your meaning. We have such nonverbal communication and such an abbreviated verbiage in these text messages. I mean, that truly is the first one I would actually point to. And then, of course, the training records and stuff. You got to make sure they're completing those and they're not poorly written. They can be understood and they're concise. But yeah, I think that answers that.
So, let's say that you're a small operator and there was an accident or you have been served for a suit. What are some of the first things that the plaintiff's attorneys are going to dig into?
Yeah, I see this all the time. First thing you're going to get out of the box is a letter usually telling you to preserve your emails, your text messages, all your electronically stored information. And they're also going to probably in that letter tell you to put your insurance carrier on notice. Um, you don't have to respond. You shouldn't respond to that. You should get a hold of your insurance broker or your insurance guy and make sure you get that hands so you preserve that coverage. But that's the first thing you're going to dig into right there is just preserving what they have. And then after that, it's going to be your safety policies, procedures, your training, and all the things we just talked about. And they're going to get it. They're pretty smart. They usually specialize in it, right? It's not somebody who wants to dabble in propane. They get in there just like a medical malpractice lawyer. A medical malpractice lawyer, a plaintiff's lawyer, knows more about the procedure than the doctor who performed it often because this is all they do. And a general surgeon may do a lot of surgery, but this is all the plaintiff's lawyer does is this procedure. So don't underestimate them. They're going to know it more than you do. So
Right.
have your ammo in advance before an accident or an issue happens. Have your paperwork done.
So, what do you see are going to be the biggest drivers of risk in the industry in the next 5 years?
I don't think that we're gonna see a big sea change in risk in the next 5 years from the legal side of things. You know, I, I, I I don't foresee a lot of different changes like that. I think we're still working as we have. It's an old industry. It's a mature industry. I don't see any big changes coming down the pipeline right now, and nor would I necessarily. Randy Warner's a safety guy, you know, and he's excellent at what he does, and staying on top of that. But as for the legal stuff, it moves slowly, so I think that's fine. Now, if you're one of those larger couple of companies I talked about, you got a whole different set of issues on your hand, and there would be answers for that. But for the small mom and pops and the middle sized companies, I think that's okay. It's worth focusing on things we've talked about and just running your business and not thinking about lawyers every day. If you're running your business and documenting what we've talked about, you shouldn't have to pick up the phone to a lawyer very much. You don't want to. I
Right.
don't want to. I don't want to get that call. If you're calling me, if it's not something in advance, it's a problem.
That's not a good day.
It's not a good day. It's not a good day. And I wish people would call me more and sooner. And now they are finally because they're not getting sticker shock or something. But my analogy, and this is in all of the propane companies out there, this advice, which is, you know, it's kind of like that movie Armageddon or whatever, where they had to go out and blow up the meteor. They were headed for Earth. You know, you have a tendency going, I don't want to call her and I don't want to get a bill to get this question answered. But if if you call soon enough, you know, let's say the meteor's out by Neptune or Jupiter or something like that. If you call a good lawyer, the right lawyer, you can turn around and nudge it. You nudge it out of, it's not going to make direct impact. It takes very little
Right.
to nudge it out of the way so it doesn't hit. But if you wait until that problem grows and it passes the moon, then it's on a direct collision path. It's going to take a ton of resources. You still might not avoid the impact. So call sooner. Find the right lawyer, do the right thing, and you don't really have to worry about that too much all the time. But when you have a problem, you got to get on top of it with the right person.
So I know we only have a few minutes left before you got to jump for another call, but I have a question following up on the statement that you just made. You've worked with individuals, mom and pops, and large corporations. What is the one piece of legal advice that applies to all of them?
It's the things we've talked about. Take care of your house, keeping issues. Make sure the safety training. I mean, if you ask me the question, what are the three pieces of advice you'd give to somebody? It'd be safety over again, safety, 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 in the right doses. You know, I mean, it has to be practical. You have to still deliver the propane, but yeah, it all applies equally what we've talked about today.
So the last one for me, for any propane company that's out there, so any owner that's listening, what is the one legal blind spot that they need to be aware of today? So an owner operator, small independent company, they run a decent business, but there's something out there that maybe they're not aware of, right? It could be a regulatory compliance change. It could be an insurance requirement. We're seeing insurance companies really starting to push the safety and compliance more. But
Right.
what would be a legal blind spot for an independent or a small mom and pop operator that they just need to be aware of?
Yeah, I don't see a lot of changes on that. The litigation's getting more expensive, so I don't see anything that. When I think of it, you know, again, the legal issues that you're talking about, the blind spot, it's all the hindsight kind of stuff. If you're,
Right.
and this is why it's interesting, and so it's a privilege to be invited on this because I don't think you should be thinking about the lawyers at all. I think you should be thinking about your safety if you're really looking at the blind spot, and that is sometimes it because the blind spot for the operator who's smaller is I'm doing the right thing and I know propane and I know how to do it safely, but I don't have time to dot the I's across the T's. I cannot tell you how important the safety side of it is. And so that's why I'm happy to say that I like to fix problems, but your lawyer, propane doesn't change that much. It hasn't. Your lawyer shouldn't be the guy running your business. He can help you with
Right.
any legal issue that you have, but I don't think there are a bunch of legal issues in propane unless you're one of those couple propane companies I talked about previously. And that's a good thing. We don't need any more lawyers. We need more
Yeah.
propane companies.
Well, I know, again, I know you have a hard set coming up here. Is there anything else that you would like to talk about or address from your perspective in the propane industry that independents should be prepared for, should at least have, they should be thinking about in advance?
I think if I were running a propane company, let's talk about risk. And I don't mean legal so much. I think that you'd want your goal as a smaller or medium-sized operator, look ahead, 1, 3, 5, 7 years. What do I want to be with this business? Where do I want to go? A lot of the stuff I do on the deal side, I mentioned, these are folks who are getting ready to retire. Okay, what happens? See, a law firm like mine, when I retire, I have no value because I'm the only value. What am I going to solve if I'm retiring? I'm not here. The Propane company has a lot of value. And so when you start looking at that, I think it was a legal issue because I'm on the transactional side. Just put your ducks in order with your financial, your books, your records, the safety stuff we talked about, so that you start realizing, okay, I know this is a great business, but in 3, 5, 7 years, when I want to retire, step back and go where warmer weather, how do I make it easiest for me and my family and preserve my legacy to sell, to make this keep going, to protect my employees and their families so they have somewhere to go. And I would start looking about all of those things too, is making sure that when you're ready to sell it, you can. It's not a big deal. I know that's not quite the answer you're probably looking for, but
no, I think it's a great comparison, or a great response, because it's many of the same things that we talk to owners about. Okay, what is your plan, and how do you want to have a transaction? How do you want to have a transition plan? Is your kids coming up in the business? Are you going to sell it? Right? What strategy are you planning for? Because those are two different paths as well. So,
yes.
I know we're running out of time. I really do appreciate you making time for us today, Rick.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you very much, and I look forward to talking to you again, Brian. And thank you too, Jackie. You have a good day.